So this right here, where we stand, right here, there was a cabin. You can still find it online on the Sunderland archives. And this right here was where, or one of the first places where I seen Stephen Grieveson, and this is where he would actually march up and down and practice the jazz band, because that's what he was. He was one of the leading people within a jazz band. And across here, where you see these football pitches, was where he played football with us.
What is happening, people of the Content Cast? And today we are in Thompson Park. Now, obviously, I've done a little bit of a walk around in Southwick, but the reason that I'm doing one today is a bit more specific, this video. Obviously, people will have heard of the serial killer Stephen Grieveson, who murdered 4 people from the years of 90 to 94. But I'm with a good friend of mine, Steve here, who was actually, he's from Southwick, and he knows a little bit more about this case. So I thought, I know a lot of people say in the comments they want to know more details about certain things and certain people who've been through adversity and certain crimes that have gone on. I always start every video with crime statistics and stuff. So I thought, let's talk about this actual story and get in deep on it. So we're here in Thompson Park, and this is obviously where he used to play footy, wasn't it?
Who, Stephen?
Aye. Well, he used to come here.
This is where, yeah, he definitely played football here, and this is where he frequented. This is, you know, I remember being in this park on these football pitches with him amongst all of my friends, and this car park here behind. It's a bit different now. You've got a garden centre now. You've still got the football changing rooms, but there was a big cabin there, and there was a lot of activities going on around there, like community action things and football, and you know, like things what they would do back in the day, which was community driven. And one of the actual things was there was a jazz band. I don't know if it's really showing my age, but even for my age, it was coming to the end of that era. But it was something what was very popular, you know, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I remember Stephen Grieveson being the guy who held, there was something called a mason, which was like a big long stick, and he would go and practice with the jazz band in that very car park. Now, why that is significant, as well as playing football on these football pitches, we're going to walk down through Carley Road and Carley Square and through these pit houses. But you've got to remember, this is a time in the 1980s where the coal mines were shutting, the shipyards were shutting, and this is literally, these were literally less than a mile away from here. All these people were involved in this industry, and it was a very close-knit community. And he hung about, he was one of the older guys who hung about in this area, this very exact area here, and in these houses here. And he hung around with older guys who were involved with petty criminality, such as burglary back in the day. It was people would pinch cars and pinch radio cassette players and that type of thing. And he hung about in a very tough community with a group of other guys. But at the same time, what he would do, and this is the thing, what already separated him as being different, he would then come and play football with us, who were 9, 10 years younger than them.
And how old was he at the time? 18
and 19. And that right there is a sign. It's a red flag. Now, we would never have seen that danger. Never. And then, to go back to what I was bringing up, he would also, so he'd be playing football, watching us, and sometimes participating on these very football pitches here with us. But then he'd go to the other side of the park and play in the jazz band, which was totally unusual. None of his other peers were doing that. Even for me, I remember being 10, 11, 12-year-old thinking, that looks odd.
Like,
that looks odd.
Stands out.
A 19-year-old guy in the jazz band.
Was that not something that was accepted then? I know obviously now it would stand out like a bit of a dodge pot, wouldn't it? But then was that like...
The people who he knew, and some of them who are still hanging about now, though, these were tough guys. They were very tough lads.
So it was almost accepted him doing that?
No, he was doing his own thing, yeah, and I suppose, like, they just didn't participate in that. Nobody did.
Just let him get on with it.
It let him get on with it because nobody thought of it as, you know, like, it looked a bit odd, but nobody thought just how sinister things would turn out to be. We didn't know. I think my mother, you've just been speaking about, thought that I was playing with somebody, football, because at that age, all I ever wanted to do was become a football player and play football. And I just wanted to, actually we missed a little bit out, didn't we, which we wanted to go over. For everybody who's watching, this is a very well-known park. It's called Thompson Park, but it actually was called the Margaret Thompson Park. So it's actually, now it's just the Thompson Park, and it was gifted from a lady who was actually, this land was gifted to her, and she gifted it to the Sunderland Corporation, or the Sunderland Council, and they turned this into this magnificent park. Well, not magnificent, but a very, very well-loved park in the community. Everybody's got a connection to this park around here. Everybody's been here, and it has given people a lot of pleasure. But little did someone like Margaret Thompson realise, in her donating this for the pleasure of the community, that it was going to be for a different type of pleasure for one person. And this literally, well, like it says, when you look back now in hindsight, this was where maybe Stephen Greason started looking for what was his prayer. And maybe when I look back now, and I was playing football on these pitches, and he was on this park with us, a much older male, maybe he was stalking us or looking at committing or fighting them type of urges.
It's mad that though, because I did a video in Durham. So now that's where he got tried, out at Durham Court. And I actually mentioned him, and I only found out him because of Google.
I actually want to correct this. I think it actually was Leeds, you know.
Was it Leeds?
I think it was Leeds.
Well,
Court,
I don't know where I found it from, but I wonder how many people in Southwick or even Sunderland that knew about this killer and realised, like, it's mad to think how close to home it was for you. Well, obviously, that,
for the whole
that same
community,
serial killer, obviously seen you and all that, it could have been you.
Well, remember, this is still a very close-knit community, and it really does still affect a lot of people around here. I've still got, I'm going to take this moment just to mention, look, apart from Stephen Greason, I'll not be mentioning anybody else's name.
Aye.
And I think it's very important in these cases, because unfortunately, even Stephen's family become a victim.
I get
And
that.
I just want to point this out, we'll turn here, that when these terrible, terrible, atrocious things happen in society, unfortunately, the families sometimes bear the brunt of it, and I would never ever condone that, because they're innocent people. They're just as much as victim as the victim.
Oh, look, it says on there now, Margaret.
Oh, there you are. Actually, so there you are.
There you go, look.
Margaret Thompson.
So it's still called Margaret Thompson Park.
But it's...
Oh, it's known as Thompson Park.
It's known as Thompson Park.
We're on Carley Road here.
We're on Carley Road, a very, very historical road within Sunderland. Carley Quarry, and this lead, or would have led down all the way to the shipyards and the coal mines and all of the major industries, which is on the River Wear at the bottom of this road. So this is a very historical, important road.
So these are these all little pit houses?
This I'm saying, so all these houses are pit houses. This is what is classed as a pit. These are pit houses. So all the people who lived in there originally were from the pit, and there's still some old pit families and pit men who still live here, and they're entitled for coal for the rest of their lives. You know that, and you still see them getting delivered their coal. They're still odd. There's the odd pitman who still lives here, and when he was retired in 1990, they're allowed to have coal for the rest of their lives until they pass away.
That's mental, that, isn't it?
So some of them have got coal stacked to the top. like they're just taking this coal, you know, taking this coal. We're going to get back to the story, and I'll still try and protect people. We're not going to mention names too much, and even maybe not even point out the exact streets. We'll just be walking along them. But within these streets here, at the side of what is Thompson Park, a young guy, and Stephen's first victim lived here. And that guy was, or that boy, a boy who went to my school, went to school with me. It's called Simon Martin. And as you can see, the close proximity, that's the park there.
Oh, yeah. So his first victim lived
His first victim lived
Was
in...
it this street?
Well,
you have to say the house, but...
He lived in, yeah, this street. And so this is where the story starts taking a dark twist.
And you know with that, you know the whole, like, he lived in this street. How did he kill that first victim? And what was the crack with that? Did he just get him from the park? Did he get into his house? Like, what's going on there?
There was reports that said that, and this is actually from the BBC, you can read from these verified news outlets, that Stephen and Martin were seen together at points before he was
What do you mean seen together as friends?
seen together in some capacity, yeah,
Right.
friend, because obviously they lived in this community.
Aye.
This was very different. This was called, these houses, as you can see, pretty modern and new. This was called Carley Road and Carley Road Flats, for everybody who understands that, well, from back in the day. This was called Carley Road Flats, and these were like masonettes. I actually lived here.
Did you?
At my very first house. Lived here.
Bloody hell.
6-year-old.
It didn't look like old houses there.
Well, they were maybe it's about 20 years old.
Aye, fair enough.
But before that, these were like 4-story masonettes, people living on top of each other,
Right.
families.
Right.
So this was a very tight-knit community. And we used to play football. This was a field called the Oval, and there was a big grass field here, and we used to play football in here. And Stephen Grayson lived here.
Did he? One of
He
these?
lived here. He lived in this area.
Do you know which house?
Well, like I said, I'm not going to point the exact.
But it was one of these.
It was somewhere inside it, within this, because like I say, these were all flats here, and this was called Carley Road Square, and he lived inside of here with his family, and he come from quite a large family. There was about, I think, about 7 or 8 brothers and sisters. One of his sisters was actually a really good football player, so she actually played football with us on this field and on Thompson Park. But he'll have hung about around here with these older guys who were into basically petty criminal activities. But these guys were like the older ones who were, you know. These were actually like 4-story flats with like 4 families or 4 houses on one side and 4 houses on the other side. So the families were tightly knit together, and this is where they lived. Oh. This is where where Stephen lived in this area. It used to be a very busy road, this, but they stopped cars from being able to drive. Buses are allowed to drive up here, but this used to be a very busy road. And the reason why I'm showing you this for, you can see on this side, that's Carley Road Flat, like Carley Road Flat or was. Can you see how close the actual river is?
Aye.
So this is where all this industry within Sunderland, lots of jobs. You can imagine, I'm talking 100 years ago here now. The biggest shipbuilding yards, Stadium of Light, which is built on top of a coal mine. So you had the shipyards, the coal mine, you had the quarry works, all this limestone getting quarried.
Aye.
And then you had these communities right here. This is how close the community lived to all this industry, which basically most of it is now, it's gone. It's all gone now. This actually here, this pub, my friend owned this pub. Very good friend of mine.
Wasn't it?
And he actually built these houses to the side of them. And I actually was there when all these houses were built. So I've got long ties with these families and people from this area. That's Carley Road.
Aye.
Past Margaret Thompson Park, all the way up to Carley Quarry, and then that used to go all the way down onto the river. They blocked this road off about 30 years ago, but you can imagine like wagons full of limestone and all sorts of horse carts. They would be coming down Carley Road, taking all of the stuff down onto what
down,
was
so.
a massive industry of smoke and fire and furnaces and coal mines and shipbuilding, and that's Collie Road basically.
I wonder how many people who were from the area didn't know that.
Well, that's
Because obviously when you see it now and you actually see the infrastructure of the road and now, it makes sense. You know what I mean? But you didn't. It's mad that. Because I've lived here for 35 years and I didn't know.
Maybe we should go up to Carley Quarry one day
I
and
will
then
do
I
a
can
video
show
on
you
it.
that and you're going, that
Starts
makes sense.
making
And you can
sense,
see
aye.
it and then it goes all the way down to there.
Let us know in the comments below if anyone would like to see that video. We'll make it happen. Because I didn't know that, but we can get Steve to come and fill you in and all that type of stuff. How long you been into history for?
All my life.
And just everything?
Well, one of the things I've always said was you've got to master the environment. It's one of the golden rules in life. You can never underestimate known enough knowledge. The more knowledge that you know around you on the very earth that we're walking on, the better equipped you are at getting most out of that environment.
But do you know this story in particular about Stephen Greaveson? Mm-hmm. Is that because it was like riveting through the community, or did you have an interest or a concern for your own safety? Or was this just everyone in the area would know this story? Do you know what I mean?
Everybody in this area will know this story, and when I say this, I obviously wasn't the only one. It was because that's what the police were doing. I've been questioned and interviewed twice.
In relation to this?
In relation to this, alongside many, I assume, hundreds of people.
So you mentioned Simon being Greaveson's first victim. Obviously we've walked down the streets where he would have lived. Mm-hmm. How did he die? Because obviously a lot of people, when they know about a serial killer or a murderer or whatever, there's always like a theme in there. There's always something that can link one murder to the next. Was that the same with him? Was it a shooting?
Unfortunately, there was apparently mistakes made in that investigation. Apparently the pathologist didn't see the strangulation marks on Simon. He had head injuries and he was partially clothed.
So he was strangled though? They just didn't detect it?
They didn't see it. That's it. Like you said, you can look it up online and see these sources. They also say that the police at that time weren't looking for any sexually motivated killing, which obviously become apparent with the later victims. You can see for myself, even speaking to it at that time, it's still very difficult for even me to speak about these things.
So you can imagine, obviously, in my life, I've never lived through that kind of time.
No.
You know what I mean? There's been no one who's I mean, there's obviously been serial killers and that, but there's been no one who's been fucking hell, like, getting questioned and fucking, do you know what I mean? Like, going into the local area saying there's people on the loose doing X, Y and Z. You can imagine every time you talk about something like that's going to bring up them emotions.
It's very powerful. Yeah, very powerful emotions involved.
Dame Dorothy.
This is one of the oldest parts of Sunderland. There's a church across, literally just a quarter of a mile that way, and that is St. Peter's Church, and that's one of the oldest churches in the UK. Mm. And that, the reason I'm telling you that is because it gives you a sense of how old this community is as well. But as you can see all these new houses, and this building here. Can you see how them is similar to the ones on Carley Road?
Aye.
Because this anybody else who knows this was Berkeley Court, and this was a very well-established housing estate, what was knocked down, like Carley Roads. And all of them houses were knocked down as well. So these were the similar type of houses, like masonettes built on top of each other. So you had the same type of families living right down here at the mouth of the river. And this was a very old and ancient area of Sunderland, which, like it says, St. Peter's Church is still there, and I think that's about this, I think maybe it's the 5th century.
I know it's the oldest church in Sunderland.
So the reason that we've come down here is, like you said, this was redeveloped from these sort of masonette flats where families lived on top of each other, and these were knocked down like 30 plus years ago, and them new houses were built there. But it's also where Stephen Greaveson and his family moved to, and he then, and obviously for anybody who looks up the case or knows anything about the case, that's why it all comes together. It makes sense from
where the
first murders and also where he...
Why did they move?
I don't
So
know.
he's done what, at this point, he's done one murder and his family have moved. And how old is he at this
I'm
point?
not sure of that exact timeline. I'm just saying that he lived up there, and he knew
So he knew people.
Simon, and then at some point he then moved down into this is the reason I came here, which is Roker Avenue, which is another very, very well known street in Sunderland, which this is the beach down there. You've got the Stadium of Light up there, and have you heard of Roker Avenue?
I know Roker Avenue.
Everybody who lives in Sunderland has heard of Roker Avenue. I've definitely been down here more than a handful of times. I know a lot of people down here. I know a lot of families down here. But this is just to give context of the story from where... Remember the first story where he used to play football, where he would come, and was he already... ask that question, was he already stalking the likes of me at that time? What was he doing? What was he doing at that time? He was hanging about with these guys, committing petty crimes. Then he was going playing football with much younger kids, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old boys. And then, like I said, playing or practicing in the jazz band. And then he's moved down to here. Stephen Greaveson was arrested on the 11th of March 1994, and it was for attempted burglary, where apparently a fingerprint or a footprint had been found, although this is quite ambiguous. It's not quite clear when you look it up online. But so, like I said, the chain of events what surrounded his arrest is not that clear, but he was arrested. And what I mean by that is, was it the precursor? Were they already zoning in on him, and then they arrested him? Maybe he's looked at other evidence. This was years later from the very first murder as well.
Right.
Did they look through statements? Because remember, statements had been given, including myself, in 1991. That's the thing about this killing, and that's why there's so much interest, because there was a 3-year gap. Probably, I don't know, was it a case where he couldn't fight them urges anymore?
So was it a 3-year gap between his first killing and second?
And his second. And that's why
then he's done the rest.
That's why the questions are so, surrounding Simons. Could that investigation...
Could have been done there and then?
Could have been better. What was the mistakes what were made? The police didn't... they weren't looking for a serial killer. Like I said, initially they weren't... there was no connection to it being any type of sexually motivated murder. I have to give a mention to Jim Farney, who was the head of Monkwearmouth School.
Right.
And he was a very, very good headmaster. And the school actually got labelled a drug school because the police thought that it was some sort of drug activities going wrong, like solvent abuse or drug abuse. There was gas canisters and lighter fluid and lighters found at the scenes of the murders. So they were thinking that they were doing
to the school.
they were linked to some sort of solvent abuse or drug abuse.
Right, aye.
When what it really was, it was Stephen Greaveson trying to just burn the bodies. But the school got labelled a drug school, so then it got tarnished that there was, just kids were messing about with solvents and drugs. And Jim Farney pushed back on that and he really fought hard for the school because he said that that wasn't the case.
And obviously defended the pupils.
Yes, because obviously it wasn't. We had like I keep saying, we had a serial killer on the loose, and you don't realise in hindsight how. I mean, you knew, you were like, oh, people were getting killed, but you didn't realise. Like, these were adults and they knew that we were in, like I said, Mr. Farney.
But you must have...
He knew that we were in danger. He knew we were in danger.
Did you know how close it was to home, though? The fact that
No.
you had played football with someone who was picking off people who literally lived out of the road from you?
No.
It's mad, that.
No, I didn't know. And like I said, I can only reflect on that. I can reflect on that more now.
Can you remember any... Did you speak to him yourself?
Yes.
Can you remember any conversations you had with him? I know you were young, obviously 9, 10-year-old, but no.
He was arrested for burglary on that property where David Hanson's body was found. And that was the catalyst for what was a much deeper investigation.
So did he kill someone on the burglary? Or was that...
Well, he was
just
in the
the
building, wasn't he?
Aye.
So they arrested him initially. Well, like he says, we don't know how it
was linked,
did they just arrest him for a burglary and then do an investigation, or did they already have him as a suspect and then just arrested him as a precursor for the burglary? Do you understand what I mean?
Aye.
The information will be there, but it's not quite as clear when you look up online.
Aye.
Like, them questions are always going to be there of what could have been done differently. Like you said, the focus was sometimes, like you said, there was no connection. They weren't looking for anybody for the Simon Martin killer in terms of a serial killer. Like you said, they thought that...
Just coming in like a standalone killing.
Well, they just thought that it was, like you said, it was drug abuse and misadventure. That's what they thought.
At that point, when he was arrested in March, there was 4 victims linked to him, weren't there, at that point?
There was 3 victims because Simon Martin's was a late conviction and he never actually admitted to that and got convicted of that on a separate trial in 2013.
While he was in jail for
while he was already locked up. I mean, and that is another very important thing to mention, because that family wasn't able to grieve for 23 years after the murder. He never admitted to it. That was a separate trial where the police took him, obviously charged him, through new DNA techniques. I think they found a tiny bit of his DNA at the scene of Simon Martin's.
So there was Simon Martin, Thomas Kelly, David Grief,
David Hanson, and then David Grief.
And were the killings all similar?
Yes.
Yes. So obviously he's attempted to burn the bodies and all that afterwards.
Strangulation.
Strangulation.
Simon's, he never tried to burn that property.
But again, that's like a separate. Although it was the same killer, it was a separate incident, wasn't it?
But there was strangulation marks what had been missed by the pathologist, which was similar.
So where are we at? Gillside House.
Outside where Gillside House actually was, and that's where the first victim was found, Simon Martin.
And look how close it is to the beach and all. It's hard to believe, isn't it, that someone be up to all that type of stuff, like just on your doorstep.
As you can see, there's been some new buildings and developments there, but it's still derelict. There's still a derelict bit of land here.
That's where the first victim was, unfortunately found. We're going to get the second spot now.
And remember, there was a 3-year gap between the first victim and the second one, which is very important.
So we're at the second location now of where one of the other victims was found. It's not in chronological order, but I just had to bring you down here because how close proximity it is to the
first one.
Which is literally this street, isn't it?
Well, it is the same street, you can see.
So I've just been the last clip you saw, where the first victim was, and then the third victim.
The third victim. But you can see how close. And if you turn around, just right on the beachfront. So this property here was derelict at the time also, and the fire brigade were called where they found another victim and a charred body where it had been set, or someone had tried to
Get rid of the evidence.
get rid of the evidence. Like you said, going back to what I said about Mr. Farney, and what the police were actually also looking at, which was this some sort of misadventure gone wrong, with people being in their young teenagers, drug abuse, setting fires, or something along them lines. But what it was
An absolute predator.
a serial killer.
So we're here where the metro lines, aren't we?
Well, this is where is this actually, what's this metro stop called? Stadium of Light? It is.
There's a Stadium of Light, aye. Well, that's Newcastle Road, isn't it, there?
That's Newcastle
Road.
This is the Audi garage, the Nissan garage, and this is the Stadium of Light metro. And these buildings here, where the new factories are, and see
The housing
new
estate.
houses.
Aye.
This was allotments 20 or 30 years ago. This is where two of Stephen Greaveson's victims were found in these allotments. So when you read about it, it actually brings this up. This is where he took them, and there's a lot of speculation of how he got these young boys to come with him. You know, it suggested that he asked them to hang out with him, or maybe he's offered them something, I don't know,
Some kind of reason
incentive,
to get there.
alcohol, whatever. Come and smoke a cigarette with us, or do you want to come and just spend some time with us in these allotments, or do you want to try and you know, it's going to be interesting. I've got a shed over here or something.
Were they? Because I know I mentioned at the start about when he played footy and that. Were they all young?
He was one of them guys. Remember what I said though? He hung about with I think he used to work on the fairground. He did. He used to be a fairground worker.
People probably trusted him.
He hung about in the neighbourhood. He was in a crowd of guys who hung about doing petty criminality. So you know, he'd probably, you know, impressionable young boys. He's the younger boy, harder boy. He's involved with these type of things. But all that was like him grooming them, I suppose. He's looking for vulnerable people who he could overpower. That's think about when he was watching us playing football. We were only 10, 11, 12, 13. He's 18, 19, 20, 21. So these guys who were 14 years of age, and he's 21, he's much powerful, bigger, more developed, but also looking at vulnerabilities, seeing if there was a way that he could be impressionable with them.
So when this search went on, then this is where after he was found, did they come back to find the bodies?
No. Each time they'd found a body, because remember he was setting fire, so there'd be smoke and damage. You know, so they were finding the victims, and he was I think the last crime of a victim was on the 25th of February 1994. He was arrested on the 11th of March 1994, and he was arrested for a burglary on that last building.
Right, I'm with you. So he probably
on the second from last victim, but then there'd already been discovered all of these victims as it went by each month, or you know what I mean. They were found. The only
so
one.
he'd definitely done it again, wouldn't he?
He definitely would have if he was not stopped, because like you said, the last two victims he killed in the space of that 1 month. And that's what leaves it open to speculate, because there was a 3-year window of opportunity to catch him for that first murder, and all of a sudden he went on a killing spree and killed three people in the space of about 6 months. If you look at that, no, he wouldn't have stopped. He had some sort of
desire,
appetite or desire to keep going.
So one thing I want to ask you, obviously you mentioned a bit earlier on in the video that you were interviewed.
And questioned.
What was that process like? Because obviously people want to know this. This
is a very important part of this vlog, because many people will have been questioned, rightly so, because they were trying to piece something together and understand what was going on. This was for the first murder as well. So I was interviewed or questioned in 1991.
So what were you interviewed for as a potential victim?
They wanted
not
to
a
know,
victim, but you know what I mean?
Because that Gillside house where we went to, that was a derelict house, and many people and young people went in there on a Friday, maybe just drinking alcohol, smoking, hanging about. There'll have been a lot of fingerprints and forensic evidence in there, and they wanted to rule out or try and match up who'd been in that building.
Had you been in it?
No, I'd actually never been in it. But, like I mentioned, Stephen Greaveson was arrested and picked up, or not arrested, questioned 3 days after Simon's, they discovered Simon Martin, and he just turned around and said he'd never been there, and they took his word. It looked like they took his word, but he actually had been there. And they were questioning everybody to also make try and get everybody's statement in that area. So, for instance, what would be interesting for me was when they eventually caught up with Stephen, they started putting it together 3 years later that he'd done it. Did the police go back through all of the old statements? Did they see that the likes of Stephen Greaveson was hanging about on the park? Was them statements made?
Or were they just fresh for the next one?
Well, no. What I'm saying is, like, them statements will have been there. Because when they were interviewing people, they will have said that he was seen hanging about on Thompson Park. He was seen at the jazz band. So when they went back, they'll have. I would like to see if they've seen all of that mentioned in the statements.
Yeah, exactly.
And was he seen then, but just missed
Throughout the whole thing.
at the beginning?
Aye.
Because I can remember seeing him then when I was first questioned. I remember. I'm not sure whether I mentioned him, but I definitely can remember looking back, seeing him then. But I didn't know. I was only a young boy myself. But did they go back through all of the statements then and have a look?
Was it, so for you then, was it frightening? Obviously at that point, you're getting questioned,
No.
you're getting this, that and the other. Were you not like,
No.
shit, there's a killer on the loose?
But
Like,
the second, now this is, I've never disclosed this, and you can actually look this up in a book written by Stephen Wade, and that book is called Torso in the Tank. And when they, obviously, when he started killing again, they then went back over everybody. So 4 years later, 3 or 4 years later, they come and interviewed me or questioned me again at my mum's house. And they asked me basically the same questions. One of the things they did ask me, asking us what it felt like. I was sitting there with my mother, and they said, we're going to ask you an uncomfortable question now. They says, are you a rent boy, or have you ever, do you know what one is? And I said, yes. They says, are you all right with us asking this? And they asked me some very personal questions. I obviously answered them. And that just shows you, at that point, what they were then starting to look for, or what they were looking at. Because even by his own admission, he says he'd done this because he was covering up his own sexuality. So the thing what I was going to tell you though is this: just before the detectives left my house on the second time that they came and questioned me, they asked us if I knew anything which could help the investigation. And just like I said, just as we were leaving, I remember the incident in a couple of years previously, maybe just before the second murder, and it was of a guy. I stopped at, like I said, I can't mention anybody's names, but I stopped at someone's house on a Friday evening. There was 3 of us, and there was a guy who started. I was, we were going to sleep. He started crying. Now, these people, like I said, have asked, or people will ask, how did he get these guys to come or these young boys to come with him? Well, this is something, like I said, you can see it in Stephen Wade's book. I've actually got it in the car as well. When them detectives asked me if there was anything, I remembered this incident where this person started crying, and what he actually done is, he said that he went to an old Masonic lodge burgling with Stephen Greaveson. And Stephen Greaveson told him to go and look under some floorboards. And as he went to look under the floorboards, I assume for some metal piping or something of value, he tried to assault him. He didn't realise how lucky he was, and he started crying to me. Now, I didn't recall that, and by luck, I'd never recalled it until the police officers asked us then. And I said, actually, I think I do remember something. And they both looked at each other. And the reason why that was significant was that person then made a statement.
Which...
And he would never have come forward, that person. He made a statement to show what type of predatory person and what he'd done, and just how lucky he must have been, because he really was that close to being a victim. And it's actually in the court transcripts that this person stood up in court and said, this is what Stephen Grayson
So
tried to do
really,
to me.
really, without you seeing that,
Because
that could have led to the result of his conviction, couldn't it?
Well,
or certainly part of it.
It helped paint a picture of what he was up to. Now, to finish off, years later, I went, like I said, I'm not going to mention anybody's name, not even an area, but years later, I was at a party, and my friend was there, and I'd never seen him for all that time, 5 or 6 years. And I asked him if I could have a word with him, and he said yes. He looked puzzled, and I pulled him to the side, and I said, did you make a statement on this trial? And he went yes. And he looked at us and he realised he forgot that he'd even said that to me. Maybe he's burying that in his head,
in his own mind.
But he always said, I wondered how the police, because the police just knocked on his door and he said, we've had someone come forward who said this happened to you, and he says, I always wondered who it was. And he actually thanked us because he had to do a lot of counselling and a lot of I think he had a lot of, because obviously he survived being a victim.
But without them coming to knock on his door, he would never have given that statement.
No,
and he wouldn't have given that statement if you didn't.
No, if I didn't remember at the last second, no. I'd never ever disclosed that as well. I mean, my mum knows. And like I said, the guy, if he's watching this, he'll know. And like I said, he actually did thank us. But that's how close it was around my community and myself, these things. And I'd just like to say, like, obviously, we've got my thoughts are with the victims' families, which I'm sure yours is as well.
Of course. And that's why it's important to not disclose, obviously, any of that type of stuff, because there's families out there who, as you were when we were in Thompson Park earlier on, you could tell the emotion, obviously just living through that environment, living through that time rather, you know what I mean? So, spot on. Thank you for sharing the information.
Okay.
So I hope you enjoyed that video, and I know that's a little bit different, but let us know exactly what you think of this, because I've got a lot of people who can cover a lot of stories in a lot of areas. Obviously, we'll try and cover like different stories, different kind of, when I'm walking around different areas, we're either mooching around different streets and stuff like that. But all of it is to try and show people like the adversity on the areas. And sometimes when these crimes happen and stuff, it's actually nice to have someone to come and speak on these things, so to give you a better understanding of actually, instead of me just saying, there was a local Sunderland Strangler on the loose. It's nice to have someone actually come and talk on that matter. But if you like the video, let us know. And aye, sound.